Our 3 channels are responsible for helping more than 300 hungry and homeless children in Africa, impacting more than 8 countries. We don't ask for money, we just ask that you like, subscribe, watch the video until the end, and share it, as you will be helping us with our project. May God be present in your life. Imagine for a moment waking up one morning and discovering that all your life's work has simply vanished. 3 generations of sweat, tears, and hope, reduced to dust in a matter of weeks. This is the true story of João Silva, a farmer from the interior of Minas Gerais who, in the cruelest summer of his life, received a visit that would change not only his plantation, but his very soul. What you are about to hear defies all human logic, but it happened. And the scars of this miracle can still be seen today. João Silva was always known in his region as a man of his word, one of those who wakes before sunrise and only rests when the last star appears in the sky. His farm, inherited from his grandfather and passed down from his father, was more than just a property. It was a legacy of 3 generations who knew every inch of that red earth like the back of their own hand. For 42 years, João had planted corn on those lands. 42 harvests that fed not only his family, but entire surrounding communities. His wife, Maria das Graças, used to say that God had blessed her husband's hands, for everything he planted flourished with an abundance that impressed even the most seasoned neighbors. But the summer of 2019 would be different. Very different. It all began in late January, when the rains that were supposed to irrigate the crops simply stopped coming. Meteorologists called it an atypical phenomenon, but for João, it was just the beginning of a nightmare that would stretch on for months to come. Week after week, the sun rose relentlessly over the cornfields. What were once vibrant, verdant rows began to wither in the sweltering heat. The earth, once soft and moist, began to crack like ancient pottery, forming deep fissures that resembled scars across the face of the property. João woke at 4 in the morning every day, not out of hope, but out of despair. He walked between the rows of corn, watching the devastation spread like a silent plague. The grains that should have been forming on the ears remained small and dry. The leaves, once green and vibrant, now hung yellow and brittle like old paper. If you've ever been through difficult times in your life, leave your experience in the comments. Sometimes, sharing our story helps others who are going through similar situations. And if this story touches your heart, consider subscribing to the channel to see more stories like this. Maria das Graças watched her husband wither away along with the crops. A woman of deep faith, raised in a traditional Catholic family, she had memorized more prayers than she could count. Every night, after João fell asleep exhausted, she would go to the small oratory in the bedroom and kneel before the image of Our Lady of Aparecida she had inherited from her mother. "My lady," he whispered, his eyes brimming with tears, "you know I never asked for riches or luxuries. I only ask that you not let my family lose what honest labor has built. Protect our livelihood, protect our João." But his prayers seemed to echo in the void. With each passing day, the situation became more desperate. João had spent all his savings trying to drill artesian wells for water, but found only dry earth meters and meters deep. The irrigation system he had installed with such sacrifice was running on empty, pumping hot air instead of the water the crops desperately needed. It was one March morning, when the thermometer read 42 degrees at 6 in the morning, that João finally broke down. He was in the middle of his field, holding a wilted ear of corn in his hands, when he began to cry like he hadn't cried since he was a child. There, in the middle of that desert that had once been his hope, a 60-year-old man knelt in the dry earth and cried out to the heavens, "Why me, God? Why now? What have I done wrong to deserve this?" His voice echoed across the empty fields, unanswered except for the hot wind that swayed the dying stalks. In that moment, João Silva felt like the loneliest man in the world. At the bank, The news was devastating. The manager, a man the family had known for decades, had to deliver the news everyone had feared. Without that year's harvest, there would be no way to repay the loan taken out to modernize the equipment. The farm, home to 3 generations of the Silva family, was about to be foreclosed. "João, you know I'd like to help," the manager said with genuine sadness in his voice, "but the bank's rules are clear. Without collateral, without production, there's no way to renegotiate. I'm sorry, but you have until the end of May." End of May. 2 weeks to save a lifetime of work. That night, João arrived home carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Maria das Graças didn't need words to understand what had happened at the bank. Her husband's face told the whole story. "We're going to lose everything, Maria," he said, his voice breaking. "Everything my grandfather built, everything my father preserved, everything I tried to keep, it's gone." Maria das Graças held her husband's calloused hands in hers and looked directly into his tired eyes. "João Silva, have you forgotten who we are? Have you forgotten the blessings we've already received in this life? God didn't bring us this far to abandon us now. God." João laughed bitterly. "Maria, look out there. Look at our plantation. Where is God in all this? God is where He's always been, João. Right here with us. And if He's allowed us to get this far, it's because He has a plan greater than we can see." But João had lost faith. 42 years of honest work, of waking up early, of treating the land with respect, and for what? To see it all crumble in a matter of months. It was then that Maria das Graças made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, while João was still asleep, she got up and walked to the plantation. The moonlight dimly illuminated the devastated fields, creating ghostly shadows among the dry stalks. Maria das Graças knelt right in the center of the property and began to pray as she had never prayed before. "Most Holy Virgin, Mother of our Lord Jesus Christ, Lady of miracles and comforter of the afflicted, I come to you not asking for riches, but asking for hope. My husband has lost his faith. My family is about to lose everything they built with honest work. If you can, if it is God's will, show us a sign. Show us that there is still hope when all seems lost." She prayed the entire rosary there, on the dry ground, beneath the stars that testified to her unwavering faith. When she finished, she kissed the rosary's crucifix and made a promise. "If you bless us with rain, if you save our crops, I promise I will build a chapel in your honor right here on this land. I promise I will tell this miracle to all who will listen, so they know you never abandon your children." That prayer was no different from so many others Maria das Graças had prayed throughout her life. But this time, something in the air changed. A gentle breeze began to blow, bringing with it a scent of jasmine unlike anything else on the property. The sky, which had remained clear and cruel for months, began to fill with clouds from nowhere. Maria das Graças looked up and saw something that made her tremble, not with fear, but with pure emotion. Amidst the gathering clouds, a soft, golden light began to shine. It wasn't moonlight, nor the light of any natural phenomenon she knew. It was a light that seemed to come from within the clouds themselves, enveloping the entire property in a serene luminosity. And then, she saw it. Amidst that golden light, a female figure began to form. Dressed in blue and white, with a cloak that fluttered gently in the fragrant breeze, a woman of indescribable beauty smiled at Maria das Graças with eyes full of maternal compassion. "Maria das Graças," said a voice as sweet as honey, clear as spring water, "dear daughter, your faith has touched the Father's heart. Your husband didn't just lose hope in the harvest. He lost faith in divine goodness. But you, my daughter, never doubted." Maria das Graças couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as she gazed at that apparition that could only be Our Lady. "Lady," she managed to whisper, "save our family. Save this land that has been blessed by the honest work of 3 generations." The apparition smiled and spread her hands over the devastated fields. "My daughter, from now on, this land will be more than blessed. It will be protected. Go get your husband, for what is about to happen needs to be witnessed by those who have lost their faith, so that they may regain it." If this story is awakening your faith or bringing hope during difficult times you may be experiencing, share it with someone who needs to hear about miracles. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as we have many other stories of faith and miracles to share with you. Maria das Graças ran home like a woman possessed by divine urgency. She found João still sleeping and shook him vigorously. "João, wake up. Wake up now. You need to see." "What is it, Maria? What time is it?" João mumbled, still half asleep. "It doesn't matter what time it is. Get up and come with me. Our Lady is in the fields." João looked at his wife as if she had lost her mind. "Maria, are you okay? Did you have a nightmare?" "João Silva, I've never felt so good in my life. Get up now and come with me before it's too late." Something in the tone of Maria das Graças' voice made João stand up. In 43 years of marriage, he had never seen his wife with that expression. Her eyes shone with a light he couldn't quite identify, a mixture of joy and urgency that made him put on his clothes without question. When they left the house, João immediately noticed something had changed. The air, which had been dry and stifling for months, now held a refreshing humidity. The sky, once a relentless blanket of stars over the void, was now covered in dense clouds that moved strangely, as if guided by an invisible force. "You'll see," she replied, pulling him by the hand toward the center of the plantation. When they reached the spot where Maria das Graças had said her prayers, João stopped immediately. His eyes widened at what he saw. The luminous figure was still there. Our Lady, majestic and serene, floated a few inches above the devastated soil. Her presence radiated a peace João hadn't felt in months, a tranquility that penetrated to the bone and calmed all the anxiety in his heart. "João Silva," said the heavenly voice, addressing him directly, "Dear son, why have you lost your faith?" João couldn't answer. He knelt instantly, not out of obedience, but because his legs simply couldn't support him at the sight. I don't understand," he managed to stammer. "Why now? Why when all is lost?" Our Lady smiled with a maternal tenderness that melted all the defenses João had built around his embittered heart. "My son, nothing is lost when there is faith. You worked this land with love, fed your families with its fruits, raised your children with the values you learned from your parents. Do you believe that the Heavenly Father doesn't see this? Do you believe that your dedication went unnoticed? But the drought, the lack of rain, the lost crops." João tried to argue. "The drought tested your resolve. The lack of rain tested your creativity. The seemingly lost crops are testing your faith. And now, João Silva, the time for your reward has come." Our Lady raised her hands to the cloud-laden sky. "What is about to happen in this land will be a sign not only for you, but for all who doubted that miracles still exist in the world. This property will become known not only for the abundance of its harvest, but for proof that true faith never goes unanswered." And then, it began to rain. But it was no ordinary rain. The first drops that touched the dry ground were different. Each drop seemed to contain a life of its own, penetrating the parched earth with a force that defied any scientific explanation. In a matter of minutes, those drops transformed into a heavy, generous rain, washing not only the soil but also the tears from the faces of João and Maria das Graças. The apparition began to slowly fade, but its voice remained clear. João Silva, Maria das Graças, this miracle is not just for you. It is for all who need hope. Tell this story. Share this blessing. And always remember, when all seems lost, that is exactly when miracles are about to happen. The golden light gently dispersed, mingling with the raindrops that now fell intensely across the property. Our Lady had disappeared, but her presence could still be felt in every drop that touched the ground. João and Maria das Graças stood there, embracing each other under the miraculous rain, weeping with gratitude. After months of despair, there was finally hope. But the miracle was just beginning. The rain continued for 3 days straight. Not a torrential downpour that would destroy what remained of the crop, but a steady, measured rain, as if precisely calculated to give the land exactly the amount of water it needed. The first day after the rain stopped, João walked through the fields with his heart in his mouth. Was it possible for such devastated plants to recover? Could months of drought be reversed in just 3 days of rain? What he found defied every law of nature he knew. The corn stalks, which had been yellow and brittle, now displayed a vibrant green that seemed to radiate life of their own. The ears that had withered were beginning to swell again, revealing rapidly growing kernels. Within a week, what had seemed like a dead crop had transformed into the most lush cornfield João had ever seen in his 42 years of experience. But it wasn't just the recovery that was impressive. It was the exceptional quality of the crop. The corn stalks grew taller than usual. The ears were larger and fuller. The kernels had a golden color that shimmered in the sun, as if each one were a tiny precious nugget. And most impressive of all, the harvest was growing at a speed that defied any known agricultural schedule. Neighbors began to notice the transformation. Farmers from all over the region came to see for themselves the miracle of the Silva cornfield. Some came out of curiosity, others out of skepticism, but all left impressed. Antonio, the closest neighbor, was one of the first to visit the property after the miracle. João, in 50 years of farming, I've never seen anything like it. What seeds did you use? What fertilizer is that? What new technique is that? João looked at his friend of decades and smiled. Antonio, the only technique I used was my wife's prayer. The only different seed was the faith I almost lost. And the only special fertilizer was the tears we shed asking heaven for help. Antonio laughed, thinking his friend was joking. João, come on. Tell me the secret. That's when Maria das Graças approached and, with the simplicity of someone speaking an absolute truth, told the whole story. The apparition of Our Lady, the promises made, the miraculous rain, everything exactly as it had happened. Antonio listened in silence, his skeptical smile slowly fading as he realized the Silvas were completely serious. Are you saying Our Lady appeared here? In this plantation? We're saying it because it happened, Maria das Graças replied calmly. And this land is now blessed. Anyone who wants to can come and see for themselves. And that's exactly what happened. The news spread like wildfire. First among neighbors, then throughout the city, until it reached the regional newspapers. Within weeks, the Silva's farm was receiving visitors from all over the state of Minas Gerais. Devout Catholics came seeking confirmation of their faith. Skeptics came seeking scientific explanations for the phenomenon. Journalists came seeking a good story. Scientists came seeking agronomic answers. But everyone left the place transformed in some way. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, an agronomist from the Federal University of Vicosa, was one of the experts who came to investigate the case. His technical analysis of the soil and the plantation revealed something he himself admitted he couldn't explain. "From what I can observe," he said in an interview with a local newspaper, "this plantation presents characteristics that deviate from any known pattern. The soil presents nutrient levels that don't correspond to the region's history. The plant growth rate is incompatible with the recorded climatic conditions. And the quality of the grains surpasses any standard I've ever analyzed in my career." When asked about a possible scientific explanation for the phenomenon, Dr. Mendoza was honest. "As a scientist, my obligation is to seek rational explanations. But as a man, I must admit that there are things in this world that are beyond our current understanding. What happened on the Silva farm may not have a scientific explanation yet." If you're touched by this story and believe in the power of miracles, share in the comments a time you witnessed something inexplicable in your life. Your experience may bring hope to someone in need. And to not miss other stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. As the estate's fame grew, João and Maria das Graças remained faithful to the promise they made on the night of the miracle. With part of the exceptional harvest income, which surpassed any previous harvest on the estate by 300%, they began building a small chapel right on the spot where Our Lady had appeared. The chapel was built with stones from the region and wood harvested from trees on the property. Simple, but built with love and reverence, it became a place of pilgrimage for people from all over the country. Maria das Graças made a point of personally welcoming each visitor who arrived. She told the story in exact detail, without exaggeration, but also without omitting the magnitude of what she had witnessed. Her simplicity and sincerity convinced even the most skeptical. "My daughter," she once said to a young woman who had lost her job and had come to ask for prayer, "Our Lady didn't appear here just to save our plantation. She appeared to remind us all that we are never alone. That no matter how dark the night seems, dawn always comes." That year's harvest not only saved the Silva farm but completely revolutionized their lives. The corn produced was of such exceptional quality that it secured contracts with the best companies in the region. The income they earned allowed them not only to pay off all their debts but also to expand the property and further modernize their equipment. But the most important thing wasn't the financial success. It was the spiritual transformation the miracle brought to the entire family. João, who had lost his faith, became one of the most devout men in the region. Every morning, before starting work on the plantation, he would go to the chapel for a prayer of gratitude. His change was so profound that it impressed everyone who knew him. "The João before the miracle and the João after are two different people," commented Antonio. "Before, he worked because he had to. Now, he works as if participating in a sacred mission." And that was truly how João approached his work. Each crop planted was a new opportunity to witness divine care. Each bountiful harvest was confirmation that the miracle continued to work in that blessed land. The children of João and Maria das Graças, who had moved to the capital in search of opportunities, returned to help manage the property. The farm had become more than a family business. It was a center of faith that attracted people from all over the country. Carlos, the eldest son, with a degree in business administration, took over the financial management of the property. Ana, the middle daughter, with a degree in tourism, organized a structured itinerary for visitors. And Pedro, the youngest, with a degree in agronomy, managed the technical side of production, always marveling at the results he obtained from that special land. "Dad," Pedro said in a conversation after a particularly bountiful harvest, "I've studied everything about agriculture, I know all the modern techniques, but I confess I can't explain what happens here. This land produces in a way that defies all the manuals." João smiled at his son and placed his hand on his shoulder. "My son, not everything in this life can be explained in books. There are things that can only be understood by the heart. And the heart understands that this land has been touched by the divine. 5 years had passed since the miracle. The Silva farm had become one of the most visited religious tourist attractions in Minas Gerais. The small chapel, built on the site of the apparition, received dozens of faithful daily seeking prayers and blessings. Many arrived carrying their own anguish and despair. Farmers facing difficulties similar to those João had endured. Families in financial crisis. People given up on by doctors. Young people with no prospects for the future. And all found, in that simple but sacred place, a renewal of hope. Maria das Graças, now with completely white hair but with a smile that radiated peace, continued to welcome visitors with the same simplicity as the first day. "My daughter," he said to a mother who had lost her son in an accident, "I cannot take away the pain you feel, but I can share with you the certainty that we are not abandoned. Our Lady knows our every tear, and when we least expect it, she shows us that there is meaning even in our pain." Minor miracles, or at least those reported as such, began to occur frequently on the property. People would arrive sick and leave healed. Marriages on the verge of divorce would reconcile after a visit to the chapel. Young addicts would find the strength to recover. João kept a notebook where he recorded all the testimonies he received, not out of vanity or to promote himself, but out of gratitude and to never forget how generous God had been to his family. "If Our Lady has allowed us to be instruments of such grace," he would say, "our obligation is to honor this trust by always being humble and grateful." The Silva's humility impressed everyone. Despite their financial success and the fame they had acquired, they continued to live simply. The house remained the same, with only a few necessary repairs. The clothes remained simple and functional. Luxury had no place in that home, which had learned to find richness in much deeper things. One Sunday afternoon, 10 years after the miracle, João sat on the porch of his house, watching the throngs of visitors arriving for afternoon mass in the chapel. It was a scene repeated every weekend. Entire families, groups of young people, elderly people leaning on canes, all walking respectfully toward that small temple built in the middle of the plantation. Maria das Graças approached and sat beside her husband. "João, have you ever imagined what our lives would be like if Our Lady hadn't appeared that night?" João remained thoughtful for a few moments. "We probably would have lost everything, Maria. The farm, the house, perhaps even our family would have been scattered. I would have died bitter, angry with God. And now I know that every hardship we've endured was necessary to prepare us to receive such a blessing. If we hadn't hit rock bottom, we wouldn't have known the true depth of divine mercy." Maria das Graças held her husband's calloused hand. "Sometimes I think Our Lady didn't appear to save our plantation. She appeared to save our soul." João nodded silently. He had discovered a truth few have the privilege of knowing. The greatest miracles are not those that solve our material problems, but those that transform our hearts. That night, as they had done every night for 10 years, the couple went to the chapel to pray the rosary. The small building was lit by candles offered by the day's visitors. On the simple altar, the image of Our Lady of Aparecida, the same one Maria das Graças had inherited from her mother, was covered in fresh flowers left by the faithful. Kneeling before that image, João and Maria das Graças prayed not only for their own intentions, but for all the people who had passed through there in search of hope. They prayed for the skeptics who arrived doubting and left questioning their certainties. They prayed for the devout who arrived believing and left strengthened in their faith. They prayed for all those who would yet arrive, carrying their pain and anguish. "Most Holy Virgin," Maria das Graças prayed softly, "thank you for choosing our humble family to be an instrument of so much good. Thank you for transforming our greatest sorrow into our greatest joy. And thank you for teaching us that your miracles have no expiration date." And it was true. 15 years after the first miracle, the Silva farm continued to produce exceptionally. Each harvest surpassed the last, not only in quantity but in quality. The blessed land continued to yield fruits that fed hundreds of families and supported dozens of jobs in the region. But the true miracle remained the transformation of the people who visited that place. The chapel, expanded 3 times to accommodate the growing number of faithful, had become a center of faith that positively influenced the entire region. João, now 77, continued to work on the plantation every day. His movements were slower, his hands more shaky, but his determination remained the same as in his youth. For him, tending that blessed land wasn't work, it was a vocation. "Father, you could retire," Carlos suggested, concerned about the patriarch's advanced age. "We take care of everything." João smiled and shook his head. "My son, when Our Lady entrusted this land to me, it wasn't for me to care for it only while I was young and strong. It was for me to honor her until the last day of my life. As long as these hands can hold a hoe, as long as these feet can walk between the rows of corn, I will remain here." And it continued. Every morning, João would wake before dawn, drink his black coffee, and walk slowly to the field. Not to check that everything was in order, his children took perfect care of the technical aspects, but to converse with God among the rows of corn, as he had done for decades. "Lord," he would say in his morning prayers, "thank you for another day in this blessed land. Thank you for allowing these old eyes to still see the miracle renewed with each harvest. And thank you for using our smallness to show your greatness." Maria das Graças, at 75, remained the soul of that sacred place. Even with arthritis in her hands and tired eyes, she made a point of personally welcoming each group of visitors that arrived. Her memory remained clear enough to recount the details of the apparition, but her wisdom had grown with the years. "My daughter," she said to a young mother who had lost her job and had come to ask for prayer, "when Our Lady appeared here, it wasn't just to solve our problem. It was to teach us that God never gives us a burden greater than we can bear. And when it seems we can't bear it anymore, that's exactly when the miracle is about to happen." The young woman listened attentively, but still looked discouraged. "But how were you so sure that Our Lady would help?" Maria das Graças smiled with the tenderness of someone who has lived a long life and learned life's most important lessons. "I wasn't sure, dear. I had faith. And the difference is that certainty requires proof, but faith only needs trust. When we place our anguish in the hands of Our Lady, she always finds a way to transform our despair into hope." These simple words, spoken with the authority of someone who had experienced a miracle, touched the hearts of all who heard them. Many visitors returned months later to share how that conversation had changed their outlook on life. It was a December morning, during the summer harvest season, that something happened that would forever mark the history of the Silva farm. João was in the field, overseeing the harvest, when a group of journalists arrived to do a special report on the 20th anniversary of the miracle. Among them was a skeptical young reporter, known for debunking supposed supernatural phenomena. "Mr. João," the young man said with a certain air of superiority, "don't you think this story of an apparition could just be a hallucination caused by desperation? After all, people in extreme situations can have visions that seem very real." João stopped harvesting corn and stared at the young man. His eyes, still bright despite his age, revealed a serenity that impressed everyone present. "My son, how old are you?" 28, sir." 28 years. I'm 77. I've worked this land for over 50 years. I've seen droughts, floods, plagues, plant diseases. I've seen it all in this life. And I can guarantee you one thing. I know very well the difference between despair and a miracle." João approached the boy and continued. "Despair made me cry, made me question God, made me think about giving up. But the miracle brought me a peace I'd never felt before. It restored the faith I'd lost. And do you know what's the greatest proof that it wasn't a hallucination? What, sir? João pointed to the surrounding fields, where corn grew lushly under the midday sun. Hallucinations don't bear fruit, my son. Hallucinations don't feed a family. Hallucinations don't transform dry land into a thriving crop. And hallucinations don't change a bitter man's heart into a grateful one. The young journalist fell silent, clearly touched by the simplicity and sincerity of those words. But you understand that, from a scientific point of view, it's difficult to accept that. João raised his hand, gently interrupting. My son, I understand perfectly. I was also once skeptical about many things. But you know what I've learned? Science explains the how of things. Faith explains the why. And sometimes, we need both to fully understand life. That conversation, recorded on camera, went viral on social media. The video was shared thousands of times, bringing the story of the Silva farm to corners of Brazil that had never heard of the miracle. The impact was impressive. Entire families began making pilgrimages to the small chapel in the middle of the plantation. Busloads of pilgrims arrived every weekend. The local infrastructure, which was previously sufficient to accommodate a few curious visitors, had to be completely overhauled. The city government, recognizing the religious and tourist importance of the site, built a suitable parking lot and improved access roads. Small inns and family-run restaurants sprang up to serve visitors, generating jobs and income for dozens of families in the region. But João and Maria das Graças were concerned with maintaining the simplicity and authenticity of the place. We don't want this to turn into a circus, João told city officials. Our Lady appeared in a simple place, for simple people, with a simple message, that God does not abandon his children. Anything that distracts from this truth defeats the purpose of the miracle. Therefore, they established some clear rules. The sale of souvenirs would not be permitted at the sacred site. There would be no fee to visit the chapel. Loud music or any type of street vendors would be permitted on the farm grounds. The goal was to preserve the atmosphere of seclusion and prayer that had characterized the place from the beginning. This land was blessed to be a spiritual refuge, Maria das Graças explained to tour organizers, not a common tourist spot. Anyone who comes here needs to come with the heart of a pilgrim, not a tourist. This approach lent even more credibility to the place. Even the most skeptical acknowledged that there was no commercial interest behind the farm's activities. All income generated by the land's increased productivity was reinvested in maintaining the chapel, assisting visitors in need, and supporting charitable work in the region. Ana, the couple's daughter, had organized a group of volunteers who provided soup and bread to pilgrims who arrived from far away without the resources to feed themselves. Pedro, their agronomist's son, gave free lectures to small farmers in the region, sharing the techniques he used on the farm, although he always made it clear that the main secret to the land's productivity was not technical, but spiritual. One particular episode deeply impacted the Silva family and everyone who followed the farm's history. It was a March afternoon when a young woman arrived, alone, carrying a child. She was visibly distressed, wearing simple, patched clothing. She asked to speak with Maria das Graças in private. "Ma'am," she said with a choked voice, "I came from far away because I heard that Our Lady performs miracles here. My son is very sick. The doctors said there's nothing more that can be done." Maria das Graças looked at the child, who appeared to be about 2 years old and was clearly weakened. "What is your son's name, dear?" "Miguel. Miguel dos Santos." "And your name?" "Aparecida. Aparecida dos Santos." Maria das Graças felt a shiver at hearing those names. Aparecida, the same name by which Our Lady was known in Brazil. Miguel, the name of the protective archangel. Aparecida, do you believe in the power of prayer? Yes, I do, ma'am. It's the only thing I have left. Then let's go to the chapel and pray together for Our Lady to take care of Miguel. The two women walked to the small building in the middle of the plantation. It was late afternoon, and the last rays of sunlight streamed through the simple windows, creating an atmosphere of peace and solitude. Maria das Graças knelt before the image of Our Lady of Aparecida and began to pray aloud. Holy Virgin, Mother of us all, here is a desperate mother pleading for the life of her son. Just as you did not abandon our family in its hour of greatest need, do not abandon this innocent child. If it is God's will, restore health to little Miguel. And if not, give this mother strength to accept God's plans. Aparecida wept as she held her sleeping son in her arms. Suddenly, the child opened his eyes and smiled, something he hadn't done in weeks, according to his mother. He smiled, exclaimed Aparecida. It's been so long since he smiled. At that moment, a gentle breeze entered the chapel, bringing the same jasmine scent Maria das Graças had smelled on the night of the apparition, 20 years before. The two women looked at each other, knowing something special was happening. Our Lady is here, whispered Maria das Graças. You may not see her, but she is here. They remained in prayer for over an hour. When they left the chapel, the boy Miguel was visibly more alert and responsive. Aparecida decided to spend the night in the city to continue the prayers the next day. The next morning, something extraordinary had happened. Miguel woke up hungry, something he hadn't seen in months, and was able to eat normally. His temperature, which had been consistently high due to his illness, had returned to normal. And his little eyes, previously dull and lifeless, shone with the vivacity typical of a healthy child. Aparecida ran to the farm to tell Maria das Graças the news. Dona Maria, a miracle has happened. My son is fine. He's eating, playing, smiling. Maria das Graças hugged the young mother, both of them crying with emotion. Aparecida, Our Lady has heard your prayers. But remember, this miracle is not just for you. It is for you to tell everyone that God still works miracles through the intercession of Our Lady. And that's exactly what Aparecida did. She returned to her hometown in the interior of Bahia and told everyone who would listen about the miracle she had witnessed. The story spread quickly, attracting even more visitors to the Silva farm. Dr. Roberto Ferreira, a pediatrician at the hospital where Miguel had been treated, was intrigued when he learned of the child's sudden recovery. He asked to examine him again and was perplexed by the results. It's inexplicable from a medical point of view, he admitted in a later interview. The child had a serious clinical condition, with a guarded prognosis. Suddenly, all the symptoms disappeared and the tests were completely normal. As a doctor, I must state that I have no scientific explanation for this recovery. This case, documented and medically attested, gave even more credibility to the phenomena occurring on the Silva farm. Newspapers across the country covered the story, and the place firmly established itself as an important center of religious pilgrimage. But for João and Maria das Graças, the most important thing wasn't fame or recognition. It was the certainty that they were fulfilling the mission Our Lady had entrusted to them, to be instruments of hope for desperate people, just as they themselves had been 20 years earlier. Sometimes I think, João reflected in a conversation with his wife, that Our Lady didn't appear just to save our plantation. She appeared to prepare us for this greater mission, to help others find the faith we almost lost. It's true, Maria das Graças agreed. And you know what impresses me most? Each person who comes here brings a different story, but they all have something in common. They arrive without hope and leave renewed. That's exactly what happened. The farm had become a place where people of all ages, social classes, and faith levels found something they had lost. The hope that their lives could improve, that their problems had solutions, that they were not alone in their struggles. A particularly touching case was that of a 25-year-old young man named Rafael, who arrived at the farm in a desperate situation. Addicted to drugs for years, he had lost his job, his family, and almost his own life. He arrived thin, dejected, with the empty look of someone who had given up on everything. "I don't believe in God," he told Maria das Graças. "But my mother insisted so much that I come here that I decided to give it a chance. I just don't know if it's any good for someone who doesn't have faith." Maria das Graças looked at that young man with the same maternal compassion she showed all her visitors. "My son, Our Lady doesn't look at the size of our faith. She looks at the size of our need. And you wouldn't be here if you didn't need help." Raphael stayed in the region for a week, attending daily prayers in the chapel and talking at length with Maria das Graças about faith, life, and purpose. Gradually, his physical appearance improved, but more importantly, his spiritual appearance was transformed. "Dona Maria," he said on the day of his departure, "I came here without believing in anything. I'm leaving believing that my life can have new meaning. I can't explain what happened, but I feel that a greater power is giving me a new chance." Raphael returned to his hometown, voluntarily checked into a rehabilitation clinic, and managed to permanently free himself from his addiction. Years later, he graduated in psychology and set up a support center for drug addicts, always citing his experience at the Silva farm as the turning point in his life. Stories like Raphael's multiplied. The farm had become a place of renewal, not just spiritual but human. People arrived broken and left restored. They arrived desperate and left hopeful. They arrived alone and left knowing they were part of a much larger family. João, now 80, began to feel the weight of age more intensely. His morning walks around the plantation were slower, his hands trembled more visibly, and his breathing became more labored after any physical exertion. But his determination remained unwavering. "Father, you need to rest more," insisted Anna, concerned for the patriarch's health. "My daughter, I will rest when Our Lady calls me to eternal rest. As long as she allows me to stay here, I will continue caring for this land she blessed." And she continued. Every morning, leaning on a cane he had carved from a tree branch on the property, João walked between the rows of corn. He could no longer work physically as he once did, but his presence there was a constant form of prayer. Maria das Graças, at 82, also felt the weight of her years, but maintained her lucidity and willingness to welcome visitors. Her memory of the details of the apparition remained clear, as if the miracle had occurred the day before. "Did you know that your story inspired the construction of similar chapels in other places?" a journalist asked in a recent interview. "Yes, we do," Maria das Graças replied with her serene smile. "And we are happy about that. Our Lady did not appear here to be exclusive to us. She appeared to show that she is present wherever there is sincere faith and a needy heart." Indeed, the story of the Silva farm had inspired the construction of small chapels on several rural properties throughout Brazil. Farming families, inspired by the Silva family's testimony, dedicated areas of their land to prayer and Marian devotion. A spontaneous movement of rural chapels spread, particularly throughout the states of Minas Gerais, Goiás, and São Paulo. These small buildings, always simple but built with love and faith, became meeting points and spiritual strengthening for rural communities. "It's beautiful to see how a seed of faith can sprout a forest of hope," João commented when he learned of the movement's expansion. One June afternoon, as winter arrived with its characteristic chill of the Minas Gerais countryside, something happened that deeply moved the entire Silva family. A group of 25 children from an orphanage in the capital arrived to visit the farm. They were children between 6 and 12 years old who had never left the city and were awed by the immensity of the cornfields. Maria das Graças welcomed the group into the chapel and told the story of the apparition in a language adapted for children's understanding. The children listened attentively, asking simple but profound questions that touched the elderly woman's heart. "Aunt Maria," asked an 8-year-old girl named Lucia, "does Our Lady only appear to adults, or can she appear to children too?" Maria das Graças knelt down to the girl's level and replied, "My dear, Our Lady is our mother in heaven. And what mother wouldn't want to talk to her young children? She can appear to anyone, of any age, who needs help and has faith." "What if we don't have much faith?" asked a shy boy. "Faith doesn't have to be great, my son. It just needs to be sincere. Sometimes, faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains." After the conversation in the chapel, the children were taken to tour the plantation. João, leaning on his cane, insisted on accompanying the group personally. "Children," he said in a slow but loving voice, "you are treading on very special land. Here, 25 years ago, Our Lady showed us that no situation is impossible when we trust in God." One of the children, a 10-year-old boy named Pedro, approached João and asked, "Mr. João, do you think Our Lady can help children who have no father or mother?" The unexpected question moved the old farmer. He bent down with difficulty and looked the boy directly in the eyes. "Pedro, can I tell you a secret? Our Lady is the mother of all the children in the world, especially those who have no mother here on earth. She cares for you in a very special way." The boy smiled for the first time since arriving at the farm. "So she's my mother too?" "Yes, my son. She is your mother, your protector, and your friend. And whenever you need, you can talk to her like you would any mother." That afternoon with the children left a deep impression on João and Maria das Graças. That night, during their prayers in the chapel, the couple prayed specifically for the protection of all orphaned and abandoned children. "Holy Virgin," prayed Maria das Graças, "those children reminded me that there are many people in the world who need to feel your maternal love. Bless especially those who have no family, who have no home, who have no hope." From that day on, the farm began to regularly welcome groups of children from orphanages and social welfare institutions. Anna, the couple's daughter, organized a monthly visit program that offered the children not only contact with nature and the story of the miracle, but also a special lunch and small gifts. "Daddy," Anna said to her father on one of these occasions, "I think you appeared here not only to save our family, but to teach us that family is much greater than blood ties." João nodded silently. Over the years, he had learned that the farm didn't belong only to the Silvas. It belonged to all who found refuge, hope, and spiritual family there. 3 decades had passed since Our Lady's apparition on the Silva farm. João had departed for his eternal encounter at the age of 85, in peace, surrounded by his family, and certain that he had fulfilled his mission. His final words were a prayer of gratitude to Our Lady for allowing him to care for that blessed land until the end of his days. Maria das Graças, then 89 years old, remained steadfast in her resolve to welcome visitors and tell the story of the miracle. Her memory remained clear, her eyes still shone with the same faith as the first day, and her voice still carried the authority of someone who had witnessed the impossible become reality. Dona Maria, a journalist, asked in a recent interview, "After so long, do you still get emotional when telling the story of the apparition?" "My daughter," the elderly woman replied with a serene smile, "I get more emotional now than on the first day. Because today, I understand that that apparition wasn't just a miracle for our family. It was a gift from Our Lady to the entire world, to show that she never abandons her children." "And have you ever doubted that you truly saw Our Lady?" "Never. Not for a second. Do you know why? Because the fruits are still there. 30 years have passed, and the fruits of the miracle continue to multiply. This land continues to produce in extraordinary ways. People continue to be healed, converted, and consoled. A true miracle has no expiration date." And it was true. The Silva farm had become one of Brazil's main Marian pilgrimage centers. The small chapel, expanded several times, now accommodated 300 people and had a year-round schedule of masses and celebrations. Carlos, Pedro, and Ana had taken over the management of the property entirely, but always maintained the principles established by their parents: simplicity, authenticity, and gratuity. No spiritual services were charged, no fees were required of visitors, and all income generated by agricultural production was reinvested in the upkeep of the site and in charitable works. "Our parents taught us that this land is not ours," Carlos explained in a lecture on rural entrepreneurship and faith. "We are simply stewards of a heritage that belongs to Our Lady and to all who seek an encounter with the sacred." The farm had also inspired a sustainable religious tourism movement that spread throughout various regions of the country. Rural properties combined agricultural production with spiritual activities, always respecting the environment and benefiting local communities. Pedro, the family agronomist, had developed cultivation techniques that maximized productivity without damaging the soil or using excessive chemical pesticides. His methodologies were studied at universities and replicated on properties throughout the country. "What I learned in this land," he would say in his technical lectures, "is that agriculture is not just science. It is also art, it is also prayer. When you treat the land with respect and care, it rewards you abundantly." Anna had become an expert in religious tourism and provided consulting services to other pilgrimage sites throughout Brazil. Her expertise on the family farm was constantly sought after by shrines and churches looking to improve their welcoming environment. "The secret," she taught, "is to never forget that the people who come to us are not clients or tourists. They are pilgrims. They are souls seeking an encounter with the divine. And our obligation is to facilitate this encounter, not complicate it with excess or commercialism." One December morning, exactly 35 years after the first apparition, something extraordinary happened again at the Silva farm. Maria das Graças, now 94 years old, was in the chapel saying her morning prayers when she once again smelled that familiar scent of jasmine. Her eyes, already tired with age, were able to see once again the luminous figure that had changed her life decades before. Our Lady appeared even more beautiful and radiant, smiling with the same maternal tenderness as the first time. "Maria das Graças, dear and faithful daughter," said the heavenly voice, "the time has come for you to rest." The elderly woman felt no fear. On the contrary, a profound peace invaded her heart. "Lady, have I fulfilled my mission?" "You have fulfilled your mission magnificently, my daughter. Through you, thousands of people have regained their faith, found hope, and discovered that they are not alone in their struggles. This land will continue to be blessed, and the story of the miracle will continue to be told for generations." "And my family? Will my children be able to continue the work?" "Your children have the same sincere faith that you always had. They will know how to care for this sacred inheritance. And I will always be with them, just as I have always been with you." Our Lady approached and gently touched Maria das Graças' forehead. "Thank you, my daughter, for having been an instrument of such grace. Your reward in heaven will be proportional to the good you did on earth." The apparition slowly faded, but Maria das Graças continued to feel its loving presence filling the entire room. That afternoon, Maria das Graças gathered her children and grandchildren in the living room. She told them about the new apparition and gave them her final instructions on how to care for the farm and the chapel. "My children," she said in a calm voice, "Our Lady came to say goodbye to me today. This means that my time here is coming to an end. But do not be sad. I am happy because I know I have fulfilled my mission." "Mother, are you feeling unwell?" Anna asked worriedly. "No, daughter. I feel at peace. And I want you to promise one thing. Always remain faithful to the principles your father and I established. This land is sacred. Care for it with love. Welcome visitors with affection. And never forget that you are merely instruments in the hands of Our Lady." 2 weeks later, Maria das Graças fell asleep peacefully during her morning prayers in the chapel. She was found kneeling before the image of Our Lady of Aparecida, with a serene smile on her face and the rosary in her hands. Her wake transformed the farm into a true sanctuary of farewell. Thousands of people touched by her testimony came to pay their last respects. Faithful from all over the country, people who had been healed, converted, and consoled by the intercession and welcome of Maria das Graças. The priest responsible for the region, who had followed the Silva family's entire history, celebrated the funeral mass with a moving homily. Maria das Graças Silva was not just a farmer. She was a mystic. She was not just a devotee. She was a saint. Her entire life was a living testimony that Our Lady continues to visit her children, continues to perform miracles, continues to transform pain into hope. Today, 40 years after the first apparition, the Silva farm remains a beacon of hope. The crops produce abundantly, the chapel welcomes thousands of faithful annually, and miracles continue to happen. The story of João and Maria das Graças proves that Our Lady never abandons those who truly trust in her maternal protection. What about you? Have you experienced a miracle in your life? Share your experience in the comments and subscribe for more stories of faith that transform lives.